Good afternoon, folks. East Coast time. Good morning, West Coast time, and good evening, India time. Welcome to the Saturday noon hour hosted by the US India Political Action Committee and the Imagine India Institute. It's our pleasure to have my co moderator, co host with me, Dolly Kapoor, co founder and director of the US India Political Action Committee. And I am Robinder Sachdev, president of the Imagine India Institute. Today's show or discussion we think would really be special, Dolly. And what are your thoughts on the topic of the day today? Before we invite, we have a fantastic set of women leaders who've been trailblazers in their own right who will join us shortly. So, Dolly, what is your thought on the topic today?
Good evening, Robinder. So nice to really co-moderate this panel with you, and I'm really excited to be here and celebrate our Indian American women in politics. We have some great panelists today, and with that said, I would really say that this was the year of the women. We had record-breaking 32 women who were elected in the U.S. Congress, and we would want to talk to see what we want to see those talk about those trailblazers. We want to talk about our first vice president, Kamala Harris. We want to talk about what are the pains and gains of what do these Indian American women when they enter the political field. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities for us? How do we inspire the younger generation? What do we have for them? What is it that we can bring it for them? And what is it that they need to be prepared for? So this is what really, some of the questions, some of the answers, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their thoughts.
Awesome, exactly. And so now let us welcome the folks whom you mentioned, who are inspiring, who are charting pioneering path, and who are, very much in the middle of things. Ambassador Swati Dandekar, welcome, please. A pleasure
We
to
lost
have
you,
you.
Robinder, your sound.
Thank, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me today. It's an honor. I have known both Dolly and Robinder. I have known both of you for a long time. Dolly was always there for me to raise my fundraisers when I was running for Iowa House and Iowa Senate. So thank you, Dolly, for being there for me. And when I was first elected to office in Iowa, nobody even knew I existed till I was elected. And the only person I think who knew I was running was Sanjay Puri, because he's my friend. And when I called some of our Indian American friends, asked them to support me financially, they said, well, Indians don't win. We really do not want to support somebody who they will lose their money. And I said, well, okay. I was very kind to them. I tried to convince them that I could win. I told them I was how much work I was doing, knocking on doors. There were a few of them, especially my friends in Iowa. They knew I was working hard. They were on ground, so they saw me. And of course, that year, there were about 17 or 18 Indian Americans running. This was in 2002. And I think I was, maybe if I'm not wrong, Dolly, correct me, I was the only one, or maybe somebody else.
You were the only one, absolutely.
I was the only one who won. And so because of that, I was on front page of India Abroad and also Times of India. And it things have, like I was telling Padma, things have not changed a whole lot. When I ran, my opponent tried to tell people that I was different, I looked different, and my family did not take oaths to the Constitution of United States. And I said, that's true, but I'm taking oaths to the Constitution of United States and to Iowa. And it was like Padma's district. For 60 years, it was a Republican district. and I turned it blue. So when you talk to Padma, you will see very similar stories about both of us. And uh, I was, of course, things change, as Dolly knows and Sanjay knows. They started supporting me in big way, and everybody wants to be with a winner. But I think we need to change this a little bit. We need to start grooming our winners, um, uh, winners like Padma, but we also need to have uh, winners. We need to groom young women who are definitely going to be winners. So we need to change our strategy and have more women in politics, and especially Indian American women. And Padma and Kesha will help us also guide how we do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have now Kesha also. Hopefully, she has joined. And Padma, welcome, please. And Crystal, welcome, please. Now, what we'll be doing is that we'll have a first round, then a second round, and a third round. And in each round, there'll be a leading question. So, for the first round, I invite Dolly for you to kind of put a leading question, probably as to what you would want to hear, or actually what our audiences would want to hear also, right, from these eminent minds. And by the way, folks, this is going Facebook Live on the USINPAC Facebook page as well as on Imagine India Facebook page. Please put up your questions and comments if you have any. We have brilliant folks out here, and we will look to take your questions and pass on those questions to the guests and get their feedback on that also. That being said, Dolly, yours, please, with our panelists.
Thank you, Robinder. Again, I'm very excited to host this esteemed panel and really, really to hear your thoughts. Ambassador, thank you so much for your intro. And yes, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to see one of us being that woman who we all could look upon and who did start or what everyone, with basically inspiring so many of us to just keep going and believing in what we are doing. So thank you, Ambassador, for your inspiring story. I was just telling Robinder how this 2020 is the year of the woman, and we have 32 women who were elected to the U.S. Congress. Now, even though, despite being the most diverse Congress in history, only 1 in 5 representatives are racial or ethnic minority, as we all know. Now, the good news is that progress on women in political office is ongoing, and more women are being elected in politics and achieving high office. We have seen women in spotlight like never before, articles suggesting that female leaders actually have performed better than their male counterparts in this crisis. Think about New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Think she's really a rock star in the country. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin, who's holding the 5-party coalition on her own and doing really great. And all the women who she's working with are all under age 35. So while all being said, and now we in our country, Kamala Harris is the first Black and Indian American vice president. My question is, with these great steps forward for equality, where do we go next? So I will start, I would like to start with the ambassador, and then we'll move to Padma and Crystal to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think let's go to the younger generation first. Let's talk to Padma and Kesha first and Crystal. And of course, I will say a few things. I already had some chance to talk. So let's go to our new elected officials and Crystal. So let's do that.
Absolutely. Great thought. All right. Padma, please, what are your thoughts? And Crystal, absolutely.
So thank you so much. Former Representative and Ambassador Dandekar was raised as a role model for me many years ago when I was on Capitol Hill advocating on issues of importance to the Hindu American community. And people would say, Padma, you should run for office, both here in the local community in Troy, as well as within the Indian community that I was very much part of with my advocacy at the national level, my local community involvement, both in the Bharatiya Temple and the linguistic organizations. I'm Telugu and very proud of that and being bilingual. I also was born in India, like Swati, different from her, but similar to Kesha, to the senator-elect. I was actually raised in the United States. My parents brought me here when I was about to start kindergarten, and I went through 10th grade, and then my parents decided to return to India. And so when we went back, one of the things I realized is that I fit better in the American setting, and so I came back and became an immigrant. And got my citizenship. And when I decided to run, one of the things I realized, it took me 20 years from the time that I started volunteering in the community, whether it was in the temple or in the school PTA or in civic organizations, from the time that people had started telling me to run for office, it took me almost 10 years to even think about running for office. And I want to make sure that no person who feels that they want to commit their time and energy to public service, that they should not be so hesitant, especially Asian American, South Asian American women. We really need to encourage, because we are not always the first to take that step. And so just as Swati has encouraged me, and having these relationships with people like Swati and Kesha, who have also spoken with, it's really important that we form a network and help each other. I do that with my own colleagues here in the State House. In fact, 3 of them were critical in elected officials in Michigan who helped me. And I think that's one of the things, is to find those people who have already done it and ask for their mentorship and their help. And that's one of the things that I'm ready to do as well.
Nice thought, Ms. Cooper. And Crystal, elaborating on that, what do you think? What are your thoughts on how we can, where do we go next with this?
Sure. I just want to first start by saying I want to thank USINPAC, Sanjay Puri, Vic Chauhan for inviting me today. And it's an honor to be on with you, Dolly and Robinder, who is a professor at my alma mater, American, and to be with such a, esteemed a panel. So I'll say this. I think I was fortunate growing up with a father. My father comes from Kashmir, my mother from Punjab. My father was a huge advocate of me entering politics at a very young age. So I think in my household, my kind of foundational environment, I was exposed to that and encouraged as an Indian American woman to enter this field. Particularly, I took the track of going into defense. But I will say this much, that I think it starts with a society. I think to see real change, we have to encourage our youth. So the Indian American society as a whole needs to encourage, their children to go and major in political science, international relations, that, to pursue a political career track. I think for too long we've been in a bubble society where we focus on, go into medicine, law, engineering, because these are very traditional professions. And I'm, back, I think when I was about 19, I didn't have many examples to turn to. And the few that I had were male Indians. I think it's really refreshing now to be able to see Indian American women models to look up to. So I completely understand this. There is sometimes hesitance, especially when you're encouraged to run for office, because again, as Indian American youth, we're not, we don't like to fail. We want to make sure we go into something where we can succeed. And it can be a little bit daunting when you don't have too many people to look up to. And I think that we're, on the precipice with having Kamala Harris as our vice president, as, first Black American, Indian American woman. She really has broken a glass ceiling. And I think that is a really critical milestone of where we're now going to see a wave of minority women entering, particularly Indian American women. So I would say it definitely starts there. It's going to start at that family unit. It's going to spread out to the Indian American society. And we just need to have more mentors. And I'll also just add I was part of the Washington Leadership Program. I was an intern with them, and I would write articles for Newsweek at Times back when I was in college, promoting Indian American in youth to enter politics. So I think having some forums like that really help give you exposure to Capitol Hill to be able to intern there. and we just need more of it.
Yep. So now I'm going to expand a little bit on what Padma and Crystal said, Dolly, is if you look at women in general, they do not talk about entering into politics. And I'll give you a good example. Once my two boys and their friends, high school friends, they were all sitting, doing something and studying for some AP test, I think AP biology or something like that. And that time I was on school board, and I asked the question to them, are they thinking of going into politics someday? And my sons and all the boys said, yes, we do. I mean, that's always there, that we could always do that. But I did not see very many young girls saying that, and it bothered me. This was just, this was multicultural friendships that they were talking. I think they were in I think they were in college, not in high school. But what bothered me, that all the men said yes, that's on their mind, but the young women didn't say that. So now, of course, it's changing. The young women like Padma and Keisha are thinking about getting into politics, and we at USINPAC and other organizations, we need to start helping young women start thinking about getting into politics too. And what Crystal said is right. You need examples, you need mentors, and I think we do have few mentors. When you have lots of them, it makes a big difference. So it's time for us to change our perception and say that women should think about, and especially Indian American women should think about getting into politics. It is so important. We have to be at the table. If you are not at the table, I always tell people, if you're not at the table, then you are not going to have your say. And like Crystal said, and parents do not think of their kids going into politics. They want their kids to go become a doctor or a lawyer or a CPA, because and I tell people I completely understand that, because the immigrant parents became successful because that's who they were and that's who they are. So but we have to change our perception and thinking, and we have great young women and young men who could become our next leaders.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Robinder.
Yeah, Dolly, thank you so much, Ambassador. Meanwhile, we do have some questions and comments coming. I'll just quickly read one comment which has come from Kelly. It seems you can read the comment on your bottom half.
Yeah. Yes.
She's saying, I'm so proud of my state representative, Padma Kapoor. My question is, once we elect Indian American women, how do they gain the power to effect change once they arrive in such a traditional patriarchal structure of the US government? I feel like oftentimes women are stifled in government roles, even when they achieve their place and succeed. Thank you so much, Kelly, for your question, and I'm sure all our panelists will address your question in some aspects as we go along. Now, Dolly, closing this first round, I thought one of the disadvantages of a moderator is that you don't get to put your views out there. So you pose the question to others, what next? My question to you is that what is your take, quick, about what next before we go into the second round?
I think my take, and I'm expanding a little bit on Ambassador's view, is that we need to change the way we speak about the women. We really need to. If we want to move this forward and push this forward, I think we need to change the way how we think and talk about the women candidates and leaders. For example, we can stop the gender judgments like likability. When we had Kamala Harris and Pence in the debate, we really what we were analyzing is the tone, the likability, the demeanor. there were so many things that were analyzed, and being a woman on stage and debating, I think there was lots of do's and don'ts that were given of how she needs to project herself as a woman on the stage there. And we really evaluate a lot with the women leaders, and these tend to disproportionately affect women. So we need to stop referring things like women CEOs. Why do we have to use the word women CEOs, just not CEOs, or women senators? We can just use senators. So I think it's important to the way we distinguish women and other leaders, like real leaders. I think we need to stop that. Just my take on how in our daily lives we kind of distinguish men and women, and kind of change and how we speak about the women leaders.
Thank you so much, Dolly. We do have comments coming in from viewers. People are watching the show. Thank you so much, folks, who are watching, and please keep your questions and comments coming. We had a comment come in for which was saying, this is here, the comment from Ashley. Ashley is saying, Crystal is an amazing Indian American woman that is doing great things for us. Thank you so much, Ashley, for your comments, and thank you, Crystal, for your good work that you're inspiring colleagues or friends or others who appreciate your work. Wonderful. Another question she had, or Ashley has, is, Crystal, what aspect of the long-time clashes along the LOC should the US be sensitive to? Wow, interesting question. Crystal, when we come to you, you could perhaps answer some of that. Now, as we move into the second round, I think the question going into the second round, Dolly started with what next. I would put a leading question, and Dolly, please take over from this, is that what are the books, personalities, your information diet, your knowledge diet that has shaped you to be the person and the leader that you are today? So we could again start in the order which we went previously, with Representative Kupa, please, and Crystal, and then Ambassador Swati. Dolly, you could please suggest.
Yeah, please. I think that's a great question, and I think that Robinder, just to add to it, is we would also like to hear is, what are the challenges and opportunities that you think that are facing the women in politics today? What is it that you would tell that what it takes to stand as a political candidate and an Indian American political candidate? So we would like to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So just to repeat the question, I'm going to be speaking to what inspired me and what are the characteristics that I have, as well as what are the opportunities and challenges that I face as an Indian American woman in the political arena. So I actually want to go back to something that Dolly said earlier. Thank you so much for your commentary on this. I think, though, that we need to celebrate women because it is unusual to see women. I think it's important to acknowledge the extra work that they have to do to become elected. This is something that, and this is exactly the challenge that you're speaking of, that you were asking about, and that is that people don't always give us credibility. So I was in a room with a candidate who was running for U.S. Congress, and I was running for state house, and I had put 20 years of service into the community, but all eyes were on this person who was running for Congress. And I think this is one of the things that we have to remember, that all politics is local. I started out actually as a volunteer in my local city in a local board back in 2002. And I think that we encourage our kids to run for office or to go into politics. It's something that we as immigrants can do as well. I think that's really an opportunity for all of us, anyone that's watching, immigrant or not, that we must get informed about what's going on, because all politics is local, whether it's Tip O'Neill who said it, or, so many of us who repeat it. Get involved in your local community. Find out what it is that your city council and your school board are doing. I find so often that I'll ask people, who is your state representative? And they won't know. They don't even know how many people are in their state legislature. And I think it's really an opportunity for us to pay more attention, because Your state houses are where your districts are drawn. It's where your schools are funded. It's how your tax dollars that come in from the federal are then spent also. And so I think it's really important to know that we have opportunities and challenges to pay attention to local politics, but we also have an opportunity to get involved in those because they don't cost as much. And that's the other big challenge, I think, as a woman, is asking for money and getting money. People are more willing to write larger checks when it's a guy running. There's an organization called Emily's List. It's basically to help women who are running for office, because they know and they have recognized that when we ask for money, one, we're not as good at the hard ask. And then the second is that people don't write us as big of a check. And so that is a challenge and an opportunity where, as not to create the model minority myth, but the Indian American community does have money, and to invest it in candidates who represent our values is really important, whether they are South Asian, whether they're Indian, but people who represent our values. So who take the time to learn about the issues that are important to the Indian immigrant community. I think that's really important, that we invest our time and our money into candidates who reflect our values. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us to make that investment.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. And just hearing your thoughts, it's bringing me back to more and more to something what we call gender equality. I think that's really, really the underlying issue, the gender equality. You touched upon that in a subtle way. Now, just to add to her comments and my question to you, Ambassador and Crystal, do you think that we have addressed and reached the best that we could on the gender equality in world politics? Do you think we can progress forward with that? And what are the goals and opportunities there for the younger generation? How do we inspire them? What do we tell them about the gender equality in the political stage? So, Ambassador and Crystal, whoever would like to take it first.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Sure. I think, so I'll go back to a bit of what I was saying of role models in society. When I was at American, I actually minored in women in politics, and I took a course on women national leaders, right? And we saw female heads of states around the world. And, my takeaway from the course was just fascinating to see countries like India, Iceland, right, Bangladesh that have had female leaders. And we ourselves in the US have not. And they actually took polls at a school in Iceland, and all these young boys came out and said, we can't become head of state because we're not women. It was quite an interesting study they did there. And it just goes to show how much influence, impact you have on the youth, based on who you have, sitting in power. I think we definitely need to obviously reverse it in the US, and we need to have more voices. And like I said, how we do that is, so part of it is how we speak. As you rightly mentioned, it's not just saying women CEOs, but saying CEOs. I think that nomenclature really matters. How we speak in meetings, in forums, in conferences makes a big difference. I myself am a proponent of women's rights, and that's because I think that we obviously need more representation, but we need to get to a point where we get to a stage of human rights, and we are equally represented in government, in defense, in law, in all sectors around the world. And that will obviously take time, but you have to start with obviously changing minds and changing mentalities first.
Thank you, Crystal. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, if I may, there's a question which has come in, and great, folks. I mean, this is the fun of a live, discussion, because we can get questions from audiences who are listening in, and they can address to any of the panelists. A question coming in from Prasoon Sharma for Crystal is, I have a question for you. What has your experience been as an Indian American woman working for the Department of Defense? Crystal, if you can quickly answer this before Dolly takes it to Ambassador Nandika.
Definitely, yeah. And I'll also just make a remark for Ashley's question. I realize I haven't answered that. So I'll give you both the pros and cons, the key highlights. I would say there definitely are a lot of, there's a huge glass ceiling, right? And there are a lot of barriers to being an Indian American woman working in defense. You know, it's not just that it's a very homogenous environment of being very male dominated, obviously, and very few minorities. But I think also working with the military adds an extra layer of masculinity that makes it challenging when you look different, when you are working, for example, on an Air Force base, as I was, and it's not just one woman to 14 men, but you are one of maybe 3 minority women on the entire base, and you're working on counterterrorism issues, counterproliferation, and it's just, you're not the kind of person that they see in a meeting with general officers discussing these crises with a clearance in a classified environment. And so I think you have to break a lot of these perceptions. Yes, did I face racist comments? Absolutely. Did I have instances, where people comment on the fact that I'm Kashmiri American, right, from conflict zone? Is there often, discrimination because of your religion and how you look? I mean, I did, but I would say this much. On the flip side of that, while I saw that more with more, I guess you'd say, middle-level officers, captains, and colonels, I did have a great deal of support from general officers. So the 3 and the 4-star generals, the most senior leaderships, were champions of me and of the few other minority women because we came with cultural understanding. Several, like I had lived in the Middle East. I speak Arabic, I speak Urdu and Hindi, and I not only understand defense, national security issues, but I also have cultural understanding, having lived there and having been exposed and studied a lot of these issues, which was something that they were often lacking. And so, I think we do have a long way to go. I mean, we see a few at the top. I mean, we have out of the 4-star generals, there's only about 69 out of 976 who were women. It's only about 7%, right? So, and I think it's amazing that we have Michelle Fournet, who's being considered to be Secretary of Defense. We haven't seen that in our history, but I would still say we have a long way to go to get it to a point where we have more equal representation. And it's still, I'd still say it's it's a bit of an unfair environment because of the, the kind of military, the Air Force, maybe the mindset that exists at the upper echelons. And so we just, the more exposure you have, the more people will start to change their mindset and be more welcoming of minority women in this field, and not consider defense to be just a masculine field, but that women can really serve there as well.
Thank you. Dolly, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Good to hear what, the challenges that you were facing and being, creating your pathway in a highly male-dominated field, of course, must be a challenge. Going to...
I just want to interrupt.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Absolutely, please.
I just want to say, Crystal, I'm like such a big fan. Understanding where you've been and what you've done. And I think your story needs to be lifted more, because I recently saw Gunjan Saxena, the first woman in the Indian Air Force, that story. I know that there's some discrepancies to what the Indian Air Force and the picturization of it, but those are the stories that we need to lift, right? Yep. Someone who is Kashmiri, who understands the challenges, working for the U.S. Department of Defense, it's fantastic to hear your story and to have my story put alongside yours. I was the first mechanical engineer in my college, and so much of the Gunjan Saxena story reminded me of what the things that I went through in college. So, just hats off to you for what you're doing in the Department of Defense.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
That is so nice to hear. We all women lifting and wanting to learn from each other and definitely complimenting each other. That is just amazing. I think that's something that we really need to do often every field, right? Go ahead, Ambassador.
Yeah. So, Dolly, I wanted to say that Padma, what Padma said about she was at a fundraiser where she felt ignored because there was somebody, a congressman was there. I have seen that. She is definitely correct in that. But we Indian Americans, we forget that it's someday it's Padma Kuppa who is going to be a next congresswoman from her district, and it is important. Padma, you are not the only one. I had seen that and felt that, of course, there's a generational gap between us. But I had seen that, and not all men do that, or not all women do that, but sometimes our own women do that to us. And Crystal might also agree with that with me. And we just have to, those who are strong proponent of equality and making sure that you, Padma, you or Crystal, that you start climbing the ladder. We want you to, we will support you, and we have to support them. And when people like Dolly, you and I, and Robinder and Sanjay, when we change our habits or our attitude or our perception, it is going to help Crystal and Padma Kuppas of the world, because to me it's very important. I remember facing the same thing. This is that year when there were 18 of us running, and Padma, I was told that they had already given money to a few men, and because they thought they had a better chance of winning than I did. It's not easy to hear that on a phone call, but as you know, when you're going to break ceilings, you have to have a tougher skin, and you have to not only do it for yourself, but the next generation that will be following us. So Dolly, yes, it is still there, and people don't change no matter who they are and what part of the world they are. And change is always slow, and so it's important for us to take those baby steps, and remember that we have to support people or young women like Padma and Keisha and Crystal, because they are taking those baby steps. Sometimes Indian Americans want to run before they learn to walk, and that really doesn't help us. So I always tell people that let's learn how to walk first. Let's support Crystal and Padma and Keisha and few other people, because then we will be able to run, because you have to first learn to walk before we run.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, so true. We got to learn to walk before we could run. And, this panel is getting very serious, of course, but I have a thought. I think we, the Indian American women have a bigger challenge. We come from a patriarchal society. We come from, where there is immense social pressure because, our the way our social upbringing is, we definitely have a lot of social bonding. And with that said, let me ask you a very simple question. As an Indian American woman, how do you all balance your family obligations and political careers? Because we are so family oriented, all of us. It kind of works differently. Let's just all face it. It works differently for all of us, we Indian American women. So my question to you, and I know you have a hard stop, Ambassador. So let me ask you, and I know you have, basically you've been there for all of us for long. So how did you manage, and how do you still manage your family obligations and your career, political career?
Thank you, Dolly. And Well, your family has to support you. It begins with support from within. My husband and my two boys, and now my daughter in laws and my grandchildren, they all are very proud of me. They support me. So that is important. It is the perception that is always amazes me. For example, cooking is my hobby. It really is. And one day I was cooking for my grandchildren. My grandchildren think that their grandma is the best. Their aji, that's what they call me, is the best cook in the world. And I was cooking, and I got a phone call from an Indian family, and I just said, "Just a minute, let me finish what I was doing." And I said I was making dosas for my grandsons, like dosas, and I was floored. They said loudly, "Oh, so you can cook?" What has cooking got to do with my political career? What I thought this is so it just floored me, and this came from our own my own friends who presumed because I'm in politics that I don't know how to cook, or presumed that my family must be suffering because I'm in politics. Uh, it's a big barrier for younger generation. And why do I have to justify? And of course, I ended up defending myself. And then I said, why am I defending myself? I love to cook. I take time. If my kids are coming home, I get up early and get everything done. So like any other woman, whether you are an engineer or you are a doctor, you take time to take care of your family. And I think people do need to realize that that's a profession. So Crystal and Padma and Kesha, like an engineer or a doctor, they just know how to balance their life for their family and for themselves. And it is every person does it in her own way, because family needs are different. My family needs are different than Padma's family needs, or Crystal's family needs, or Kesha's family needs. So I think to me, it's no different than being an engineer or a doctor or a teacher or a plumber. Whatever profession that woman chooses, we need to respect them and say that's what she has chosen, and we will be there for her. To me, that is what it should be.
Thank you, Ambassador. Robinder, I know we have some questions popping up. Please, if you want to take that over.
Sure. I mean, I'll just kind of, because the fun thing or the value of this discussion is between us, of course, but it's for the engagement of audiences who are watching by, checking by. And folks, please keep your questions and comments coming. That's what lends, more pizzazz and more vibrance to this discussion. I think all of us welcome it. So, since the previous ones, we have another two, three questions or comments. One was from Sanjeev Kaul. His point is very proud of how Indian humanism is represented by these Indian American women. India has always celebrated the feminine power of Shakti. Now that you're in a position to effect change in government, how do you see your Indianness being a source of strength and enlightenment in today's world of intolerance? A great perspective. This question is for Crystal. So, Crystal, when you reach you, maybe you can address some part of it. Thank you, Sanjeev, for your comment. Please keep your questions coming. Then we have another question or a comment from Mr. Dave Call. Thank you for this engaging conversation. Thank you so much, Dave, for listening in. Thank you so much for your comment. I'm sure it's so much appreciated by our wonderful panelists out there. Thank you so much, Dave. Then we have a question coming on stem cell, actually, from Juhi Riaz. She was one of the young girls hanging out in the backstage with our panelists. Her question essentially is about stem cells and the ethics of that. So, how is the debate regarding stem cells going, and what could be maybe your view regarding that? And also, I want to know the right framework of government policies where we can support renewables to create a true green economy. Well, Hemant and Dewey look forward to seeing a lot of the new Green Deal, some variation coming forth. But on stem cells and ethics of it, maybe each panelist, while you're discussing, you could throw your views on that. So that being said, I think, Dolly, back to you, ma'am. Please, we can continue the
Yeah, I
panel.
think some great questions, especially from the young girls, because that is, she's clearly mentioned that Scandinavian countries are much ahead of us on the green energy, the renewable energy. And Ms. Cooper, let's start with you. What do
Sure.
you think? And what are your thoughts on where are we? And basically, what are the next steps for us? How can we basically compete and move forward with this?
So I will say something that's really important is to have elected officials who reflect our values. If we believe there is a climate crisis and we need to act on it, our elected officials should also feel that same sense of urgency. I feel that sense of urgency. In fact, that is besides public education, which was one of the reasons I ran for office, environment and making sure that we protect not only the Great Lakes and our water supply, but also respond to the climate crisis was one of my biggest concerns. However, we don't have the majority. As a Democrat, I do not hold the gavel. Not only do I not hold the gavel in the chamber, I also don't hold the gavel in our committees. And if you understand how politics works, it's who holds the majority in a two-party system like we have here in the United States and in every state. When the party that holds the gavel is not willing to engage on this conversation and believing in science, then we have a problem. And so making sure that we have elected officials who are willing to have the conversations on climate crisis and how to respond to them. And so I would say that's where we need to start. And we need to start at the local level. Right now, one of the cities that I represent, they spend twice as much money on solid waste as they do on the library. So thinking about where we spend our tax dollars and how we structure our government at the very basic level is really important. And so one of the things that I have been advocating for is in Michigan, one of the local townships refused to have investment from a green energy company. It would have been $5 million investment in a rural area that really needed those jobs. However, the local township didn't want that investment because they were worried. We've seen so many places across Michigan where they have not allowed the wind turbines to go up because somehow they're going to hurt the environment and see, you're not going to see the same beautiful landscape with these wind equipment in their landscape. And so we really need to talk and educate people from a very young age about the importance. So it's really nice to see that Juhi is interested. I have a Juhi Parekh here in my district who's also very passionate, and that's who we need. We need local grassroots engagement from the community to make sure that elected officials like myself are responsive to what constituents ask for. And so I would say that's one of the reasons I came to office, is because the person who I ran against did not feel as strongly about the environment as I did. So we need to go to every location where there is a person who represents a community where they can find the candidate that supports a green economy and green jobs.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Cooper. But my follow-up question to that would it be easy to reverse the damages of the last 4 years, coming out of the France Climate Accord and whatever challenges we've had in getting any of the bills passed in terms of the climate or clean energy? Do you think it will be easy for the coming administration to reverse those damages?
Again, I don't know. I know that they are going to have, the executive branch is going to be able to re-enter into the climate agreement. However, when you have a chamber that is not supportive of the executive branch, right now in Michigan, we have 2 Republican chambers, both the House and the Senate, and they are obstructionist on many policies that our executive branch wants to put forward. And so I think it's really important that we look at not only what happens at the presidential level, but at the Senate and the U.S. Congress, and as well as at the legislative level in the state houses. I think that's something that we cannot let off our radar. We actually have a panel. Go ahead. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, Padma, I just wanted to say I agree with you. When I was in Iowa House, we passed a bill for wind energy, and as you know, as a legislator, Iowa is one of the they're always in top 3 for wind energy. But it was really what I agree with Padma, that we have to make sure that the citizens understand that this is good for them and good in long run. And so to me, that's more important. So for any green energy, the young people need to maybe talk to their parents and say what, and parents do listen to their children. I used to listen to my boys when they used to come home and talk about environmental issues or any other issues. So I think they need to also, and they become our future leaders, right? So the young women who ask this question need to start talking to their friends' parents, and their parents, and it always works that way. And I really think it has to be first. Go ahead. Thanks. I'm done. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. With the now that we have so many, the country is polarized. Absolutely. We have on one hand climate change denials, and then we have people who do believe in science. Then we have people who believe that there is corona. Then there's people who don't. Having said that, one of the important questions that I have for you, and Crystal, it would be great to start with you, is what do you think can bring us together? That can be groundbreaking, that can be different, that we've been talking about, left, right, what it would take for us to come together on some of these important issues. What is your advice to the younger generation on how they should be logical and rational about these things? What is the filter?
Sure. So I'm a big promoter of dialogue and having forums to discuss these issues. I think that what we've at least seen in the past 4 years is a very divided America. And we've seen basically 2 Americas form, as I like to call it. And I don't want to make this a Democrat-Republican issue.
Sure.
I don't want to make it an urban-rural issue. I want to look at it really as kind of 2 schools of thought. And I think that what has happened is that it's been very latent for many years. And we've seen, obviously, the last administration, the entire country has just been very polarized. And I think that is attributed to the fact that we really haven't had good dialogues and open forum discussions, between whether it's think tanks in Washington, D.C., who are in ivory towers, and people in Michigan or Iowa or Nebraska or Wyoming. We should have some of these kind of discussions on climate change, right? On healthcare issues, on education at the universities, at the schools, and really bring in different voices to do that. And if we can do that as a continuous discussion, right? I don't think we're going to be as polarized as we are in society, especially around election time. I don't think we'll be as surprised as we have been. I don't think our academics and scholars will, essentially, kind of get a lot of the polling wrong as they have. But that comes down to the fact that are you really in the bubble, or are you getting out there and are you on the ground talking to people across all states from all different kinds of backgrounds, be it economic, racial, gender, etc. And because of that, I think that's where we are in America today. And you see that the Black Lives Matter movement, right? I mean, there's just a lot of tension in this country, and it's built up from the fact that I think a lot of voices have just not been heard, and dominant voices, are the ones that we might see in media. But that would, in my opinion, would be the best way forward to try to alleviate some of this tension and try to move forward to really have an open air discussion. Bring in people from different camps to talk about coronavirus, vaccines, right? Some abortion, all these kind of issues, and hear both sides and try to come to some understanding to move forward.
Ambassador, just to follow up on her comment, do you think the dialogue is enough? It's not like we've not had enough of, these on different policies for so many years. Do you think that is enough for us to get together or basically be moving forward as a nation now? Would that change anything?
Well, I agree with Crystal. The dialogue is very important. But one of the things when we have a dialogue, and Padma and Crystal will agree with me on this one, we feel that we don't listen to them. Both sides are just talking over each other. To me, that's not a dialogue. It's like trying to drown the other side with their views. But that's what people are looking at it as a dialogue. I tell people that a dialogue is where you have to take time to listen to the other side and say, I agree to disagree with you if you don't agree. And that's called dialogue. And the other thing is we as a country, which is so sad, that when we get elected, we start, they're on this side and I'm on our side. Also within our side, people want to think that because either you are Republican or Democrat, I'm a Democrat, that you will agree with their party 100% of the time. And that doesn't happen, Dolly. I tell my Democratic colleague that I agree with them 90% of the time. And if my husband gets that kind of agreement from me, he will be thrilled. But that doesn't happen because I have a conversation with him. And so I think not only it's your side and my side, and even within those sides, they want you to think the same way a Republican Party is thinking or Democratic Party is thinking. We as a country have lost our way where we say, Dolly, Robinder, Padma, and Crystal, I agree with you on A, B, C, but D, I agree with you some of it or part of it, and E, I do not agree with you. So let's do A, B, and C together. Let's work it out on D, and for this time, let's forget the E issue. That has gone away. Because right now, both sides said, if you cannot do A, B, C, D, and E, then we are not going to do anything. And by doing that, we are forgetting, when I say we the politician or we leaders are forgetting that our job is to take care of the citizens of Iowa, Michigan, California, wherever we are. We have to take care of them. And then I used to explain to my citizens why I did not agree or why did I not agree with them or why I agreed with them. And that conversation our leaders have lost. And to me, women can bring that back.
Thank you, Ambassador. But I would like to take over. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I feel that compromise is looked as a strength by women, and compromise is looked as a weakness by men. So that's why compromise is okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ambassador. And before I have a very funny question before I take it to Robinder. So who wins the dialogue between you and your husband when you have a dialogue? So if you have a dialogue with your husband.
There are times he agrees and there are times I agree that he won. There are times when we talk, there are times I will say, you're right. And there are times he will say, you're right. And that's how it should be. Saying you are right on a given time doesn't mean that you have lost. It's a dialogue. Because everybody has great
You don't
ideas,
talk over
right?
each other. You don't talk over each other that way.
So,
Ms. Coop, yes, please go ahead, Ms. Coop. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to add, I came out of one of the big things that I did before I came to office was to start an interfaith group in 2005 over a controversy here in the city of Troy. We started an interfaith organization. And there are principles for dialogue that are to be applied in interreligious dialogue. They're called the Dialogue Decalogue. And I went to some training. I won a fellowship with the Council of State Governments, and so I was at this fellowship, and we were talking about how you achieve compromise. It's Republicans, Democrats, were brought together across state legislatures in the Midwest. And that is one of the things that I talk about a lot, is how I was prepared for the kind of dialogue and the kind of deep listening you need. But I also think that I'm in a district which is considered 50-50 or purple. So I'm not in a red district. I'm not in a blue district. I have people who write to me as constituents on opposite sides of an issue. So I have to respond to all those constituents and explain why I made a certain vote or how I solve a certain problem for people who don't agree, who are at polar opposites on that issue. And I think that that's really important. And one of the things that the way that we get there is by having districts that are not safely blue or safely red. So this idea of gerrymandering that we have in Michigan and in many legislatures across the country is that districts are drawn in such a way that it is easy for a particular party to win. And I think that by getting rid of gerrymandering and by drawing the districts so that voters, not politicians, get to decide, I think that helps also. I think it's a very important issue in the political arena that we acknowledge. In Michigan in 2018, there was a citizen-led initiative to set up a commission that would draw the districts based on bipartisan and nonpartisan involvement, not by the legislature, because when the legislature draws the district lines, they will draw, whoever's in power may draw those districts in a way that benefits their party. And that is what is happening time and time again in states across the country. And so we're very fortunate in Michigan that we had this citizen-led initiative that actually modified the Constitution to allow better access to voting so that more people vote, and also that we have districts that are not gerrymandered.
And
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Robinder, off to you. I see a lot of questions. Yes.
Dolly, Iowa has that, what we call bipartisan. Iowa has always had that, and I think it has always helped Iowa. And it's a nonpartisan or bipartisan group that we get to say yes or no. That's about it. We vote on it, and the first, if you say no twice, it goes back to the number one. So you really don't have a lot of choice. Yeah.
I just want to add one quick point. I really like
one more. Crystal, I just wanted to say in a few minutes, I may have to leave. So thank you for including me. It was wonderful to see both you and Padma, Crystal, and Dolly and Robinder. So if I leave, I just wanted, my apologies, Crystal, but I just wanted to say bye before we, if I have to leave in a few minutes. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been an honor to be able to speak alongside with you. I just wanted to add to a point that you said, Representative Kupa. I got to actually participate in some interfaith dialogues with my professor, former Ambassador Akbar Ahmed, when I was at American. And I think that you can apply a lot of structure and rigor to having particular types of dialogue, diversity of panels, where you host the dialogue, right? Having them more maybe in Midwestern states or in Southern states, not just in urban centers. Who you're selecting, right? Sometimes I see panels that are all Democrats or all Republicans, right? So I think you can also apply a lot of multilateral negotiation tactics in the same way you do between countries. you can apply them within a country on a particular issue. So I know dialogue sounds like a warm and fuzzy term, and it's very high level, and it may not lead to anything, but with the right kind of negotiation tactics, techniques that you apply in certain methods and the right type of moderators, you can get to yes, and you can come to some agreement on particular hard issues. So I think that you're right. It's all about the way that you approach it, and the form and the structure.
Thank you, Crystal. Rob, I know we have some questions popping up. Please go ahead.
Sure. We have some questions popping up, and I would like to also contribute to this question of yours, Dolly. But let me first take the comment. We had a question from Vikram Chauhan, which was coming from Christine. Have you faced any challenges being a Kashmiri American woman working on issues of conflict? You were talking often on conflict, even now, I think we were.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vikram, for asking the question and participating. Vikram, as we know, is also a co-founder and core member of the Youth India Political Action Committee. Also, we had a question or a comment from Bala. Hello. What is the biggest challenge as an Indian American woman you have faced while running for political position that you ran? I think, Bala, several of the points have been touched by our panelists. Please keep your questions coming. Anyone else, keep your questions coming for this wonderful panel. Now, if I may contribute about 30 seconds to your question, Dolly, my sense is this is pure dialogue, but we have to have a philosophy going forward of live and let live. Unless we slowly, as societies worldwide, kind of start believing in this philosophy, live and let live amongst humans and even the environment. I mean, we have to live and let nature live. Nature will let us live. So that philosophy of coexistence, to my mind, is the only way ahead, what I think. One. Second, sure, education of children. Okay, of course, we are putting too much load on the poor children that child should do this, the children should learn this. All of that comes to the poor children. But education of children, the curriculum should strictly include, in a rigorous manner, teaching of this philosophy. That's what I feel. Yes, school systems are already doing it. There's a kindness school campaign going on. Some schools are, having curriculum on happiness. Scandinavia, they're including curriculum on empathy, mindfulness. So such kind of things, but a very well thought out, compulsory kind of a curriculum all through 10 years, which would have two advantages. One, it would reduce bullying in the schools, because bullying itself is a big issue. And secondly, when these children grow up, hopefully less number of them would be, tending towards extremism, hatred of the other. So in the long term, reduction or mitigation of divides and extremism in society, I think that is the only way. I don't know of any other way, honestly, I would say. So my request would be that you are all political leaders in public service, school boards even, do keep a thought on this. We are, in fact, running a global campaign around this concept of live and let live, and just kind of spreading it. Thank you so much. Now, Dolly, up to for you, please. Maybe the concluding round, a wrap up, or as we would deal with the time of our distinguished panel.
I think that Ambassador has her hard stop in the next 2 minutes. So, Ambassador, your final thoughts before you leave, and then we can start with the concluding comments.
Well, thank you, Dolly, and thank you, Robinder, for and USINPAC to thank you for inviting me. It was my honor to be with the panel, Crystal and Padma, and I am sorry I missed Keisha because I was looking forward to seeing her. I just want USINPAC and all those who are listening to this panel, please make sure that you help the young women in your community, become the next leader for tomorrow, whether it's helping them with financial or just being there for them with as a mentor or as a teacher. To me, it's very, very important. And please, like I said, please make go out of your way to make all these young women feel great, because they are where they are because they worked hard, and compliment them for their achievement. It is not easy to be where Crystal or Padma or Kesha and others are. They had to break lots of barriers and be who they are, and I commend them. I'm so honored to be with them as a panelist, and I wish you all the best. And I just want you to know that I will be there for you whenever you want me. So take care and have a good day. Thank you. Is it okay, Dolly, if I go now? Because
absolutely.
I have another
Thank you,
meeting,
Ambassador. So. Absolutely. Thank you, Ambassador, for being there. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Padma. Thank you, US.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Take care.
Yep. Crystal, we don't want to forget Vic's question. Definitely, the challenges being a Kashmiri Indian American woman. So yes, please, your thoughts.
Sure. So I'll share an anecdote actually that happened several years back. So when I was in my late 20s, I was working in an Air Force base on a crisis cell, and I'm working, with military officers all in uniform, and I remember, I was just at my desk one day typing away, and this one officer turned and he started using some hate language targeted towards me being Kashmiri, basically. Obviously a lot of it was very ignorant. It was very uninformed. And I was a bit taken aback. It was just, it kind of came out of nowhere. I was a bit surprised. And I used it as an educational opportunity at the moment. So I stayed very calm. I didn't get defensive. I also, prior I was one of the, few or only Kashmiri Americans working on my PhD at Brown and on the Kashmir conflict, and I had spent time there. So I started to try to educate him, and I'm working on sensitive, again, conflict issues, but obviously what he's saying is inappropriate. But at the moment I felt I'm really the only one. There's no one else here who's going to defend me. There's no Kashmir Americans, Indian Americans. There's no minorities anywhere around to speak up. No one said anything. They just allowed this, and it's a very open, environment in the classic facility where I was working. So everyone could hear this, but no one said anything. And I'd say at the moment I felt, I really need to be strong and I need to hold my composure to maintain some legitimacy, obviously, in this environment and not make myself feel weak or exposed. But I will say that about 2 hours later, the senior division chief, he came over, pulled me up and took me outside. And he said, we don't stand for hate language here in the military. And I'm discharging that officer. So he ripped him up. Apparently they had me walk out, took him to the 4-star general officer, had him written up. And he took all of the other officers who were sitting around. And he said that you were all guilty bystanders for allowing this and enabling this to happen. So for me, it was a really educational moment of both being subjected to discrimination, in this very harsh, direct way, but then also feeling very protected by, again, the most senior officers who stood by in this stance of, as the U.S. military, we don't allow hate language to exist, and we don't allow any civilian to be subjected, to this kind of behavior. And this is not part of our code of honor. So yes, I faced a lot of challenges in those regards, and I think being Kashmir American, particularly because it's a conflict zone, right? There's just a lot of people are very ignorant on issues and can target you. But I've tried to use it again as educational opportunities to both be an example myself, and then to also try to teach others who just don't have the awareness, and luckily have the support from, again, the most senior officers. Then they've been champions. So I've been very fortunate in that regard.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks for sharing your experience, definitely. it's the moment. Ms. Cooper, we would like to hear your concluding. I know you also have a hard stop now, so we would like to get your concluding comments on what do you think, what is next, and how do you want to see the Indian American women for the next generation moving forward?
So first, I'd like to say thank you to USINPAC and American Bazaar and the Imaginia Institute for hosting this. It was a really lively conversation. I got to meet Crystal, which is amazing. Just to see someone who has entered the Department of Defense as an Indian American is very important to me to see. Someone who has the background and is able to lend her voice and to stand up against hate. And to both you and Robinder for conducting the panel, and for all the people who joined us. There are people who didn't comment, but I see there's a number of people who are watching. So thank you to everyone who watched. I will leave you with this little story. So April 30th, I was sitting in the chambers of the Michigan House, and the people that came into the Capitol, the people that were demonstrating on the steps of the Capitol, it's a public building. They were allowed to come inside. They came in without masks, and they started trying to come into the gallery where I was sitting with guns. They were able to go into the Senate chambers in the gallery and basically show their guns openly. And so it was very intimidating for my colleagues in the Michigan Senate. It was also very intimidating being inside those chambers, hearing the yelling and the screaming that went on outside, knowing that they were armed. But fast forward to August, and the Michigan governor had an FBI had revealed a plot against her, a kidnapping by the same people who were part of that demonstration, some of the people that were at that demonstration. That evening, I had an event where it was a virtual event, and she was supposed to be on. She didn't miss a heartbeat. She came on to my virtual event. We were kicking off Getting Out the Vote, GOTV as it's called. And it really struck me, that's what we have to do. We have to stay strong, regardless of whether people are banging on the doors of the chambers and wanting to get in to shoot people, or whether it's kidnap. If we want our children and our daughters not to face this kind of bias and this kind of hate and this kind of intimidation, those of us who have an opportunity need to stand strong. And so the fact that she went through the press conference about the FBI, with the FBI and the Attorney General about the plot to kidnap her, and then came later that evening, like 6 hours later, to an event I had and didn't miss a heartbeat. If this is what it means to be in public service, this is what we need to do. And so I've had people call my house and yell at me about my stance on red flag laws. I've had other people, but you know what? If we want the future generations to have opportunity, then we have to stand for values. And I would say that this has really been a great opportunity to share what it's been like, in answering the questions, both that you presented, as well as that people like Juhi gave us about green energy jobs. This is very, very important that we come together as an Indian American community to fight for the kind of country that we want. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it seems, Crystal, now for you to wrap up. And all yours, please.
Absolutely. I do want to loop back. I know there were two questions that were left unanswered, so I just want to briefly comment and then close. So this was, I know Ashley asked a question about clashes along line of control. I'll just say this. I think that from a U.S. standpoint, we just need to have more focus on Kashmir. I think Kashmir is often the forgotten conflict. We have a lot of focus on the Middle East, and so I think bringing Kashmir more into the spotlight of, from a defense security standpoint is what's needed from a foreign policy standpoint. And then I know Sanjeev Kaul asked a question about being Indian women and how we channel our strength. I'd say that Indian women we're definitely promoted in our culture historically. We channel our inner power, Shakti, and I think that helps us in trying moments, moments where we might feel alone, subjugated, right? Where we are faced with a lot of challenges and we don't necessarily have someone to lean on. You just have yourself, and that's where you lean inward. And I think that definitely helps. We have a lot of great role models, and obviously both like Hindu deities, and also going back through our cultural history that we can relate to and turn to in those times. And I'd say that I'm just inspired. I'm inspired at a time where we have VP-elect Kamala Harris coming into office. I think we're going to see a lot of wonderful change that's a long time needed. And I'm inspired, myself to run for office. I have aspirations to do so, especially seeing Representative Kupa, seeing Ambassador Dandekar, and I think that we need to have more of these types of discussions. So I commend you, Robinder and Dolly, and USINPAC for putting this on, and I hope to see more of this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, Crystal, while you were talking about the idea of Shakti, I think the story which Representative Kupa just mentioned was exactly that, the strength, the inner strength, and, the mental strength, or the strength in that sense, or the inner calm in yourself to be able to face such, winds of adversity, which is perhaps, I think, of women, I would think overall have more strength, but maybe Indian women or Indian origin have some more sense of, or some of that. I mean, I would not get into stereotyping, but yeah, probably there, and much more power to assimilate, compassion, and, be out there and tackle it all. Thank you so much, Representative Kupa. Thank you so much, Crystal, for this wonderful conversation. And now we will be, I think, wrapping up. Dolly, what are your thoughts, and how do we take it forward? As your favorite phrase today was that, what next, Dolly, before we wind up and end this broadcast?
Thank you, Rob. A couple of thoughts. I think democratic legitimacy in the US demands that we continue to move forward towards the gender parity in electoral office. That is something that came out very clearly today. And although gender parity across the political spectrum still appears a long way off, we all have to work very hard. Some positive changes are still occurring and occurring slowly. Women have begun to compete, and quite seriously, actually, for elective offices at many levels. As we continue this long-term process of shifting expectations for women in politics, this panel revealed that there is a number of ways we can do to remedy the ambition gap in the short term. The challenges in front of are immense, and they will continue the path. But we have to continue, as USINPAC, as Image India Institute, we have to continue to raise awareness about the barriers women face. The women on the panel today definitely highlighted a lot, and we have to continue to advocate for a more inclusive process. So with those thoughts in my mind, I definitely want to log off for the next one.
Thank you so much, Dolly. Thank you, folks who came by, watched by, waved by, gave in your comments, listened in. We hope that some of what our distinguished panel shared with you will stick with you, will stay with you, or maybe will help you, churn your own thoughts. So thank you so much to our panel. We had such wonderful experience. I mean, all ranges, or various ranges of public service, being citizen representatives, policy experts, and unfortunately, we could not get one of our panelists, Senator-elect from Vermont, due to some technical issues, probably. So our apologies to her, but we hope to definitely have her with us some next time. And with that being said, on behalf of the US India Political Action Committee and on behalf of the Imagine India Institute, we say thank you. Thank you for watching this broadcast.